It began quietly, just a sniffle, a headache, the sort of thing you'd shrug off after a long day of audiences and state papers. But by nightfall on October the 10th, 1562, Queen Elizabeth I was burning with fever in her chambers at Hampton Court Palace. Outside her room, courtiers whispered in panic. The smell of vinegar filled the halls. They believed it could ward off infections. Physicians bustled in and out, shaking their heads, trying every remedy they could think of. Herbs, barley water, prayers. And through the night, as the queen tossed and raved, one terrifying question hung over England. If Elizabeth dies, who will rule next? Because this, my friend, was not just a royal cold. It was smallpox, the same disease that had claimed kings, scarred countless faces, and terrified Europe for centuries. The queen was only 29 at the height of her power and her charm, but she was also the last living child of Henry VIII, and there was no heir. Her death could throw the realm into chaos. So, my friend, get cozy, grab a beverage, a coffee or some water, and settle in because today we are going to talk about the time when Elizabeth I almost died of smallpox. Hey friend, welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am your host, Heather. I've been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009 with my show, which makes me the original Tudor history podcaster. I am, as always, delighted, nay, thrilled, ecstatic that you are here with me today talking about smallpox. It's not necessarily the nicest subject, but it was a major event in Elizabeth's reign. It shone a light on just how precarious the whole succession in England was. So let's dig in and talk about smallpox to start with. Fascinating subject. In Tudor England, smallpox was one of the most feared diseases imaginable. It would creep silently through cities and palaces. It did not respect rank or fortune. Once it struck, the course was brutal. There was a sudden high fever, aching limbs, and within days, the telltale rash that bloomed into pustules across the body. Survival was a coin toss. Around 1 in 3 who caught it died. Those who lived were often left blind or scarred or weakened for life. No one in the 16th century understood modern germ theory. Of course, physicians blamed bad air, unbalanced humor, or even divine punishment. And with no vaccines, not even a variolation, people relied on treatments that ranged from comforting to totally bonkers. Patients were cooled with barley water or cordials made from herbs like poppy and wild lettuce to soothe their fever and induce sleep. And then there was the color red. Yeah, red. It was thought that wrapping a patient in red blankets or dressing them in scarlet cloth could draw out the disease. Some people said it worked because the red represented life and warmth. Others, because it simply looked impressive. Whatever the reasoning, when Elizabeth fell ill, she was reportedly swaddled in red, as if the color itself could keep death away. At first, like we said, her doctors thought it was just a chill. The queen had been out riding in the autumn air, but by October 10th, her fever spiked and the rash began to spread, and everyone knew this was smallpox. Her court thrown into chaos. Elizabeth, of course, had no children. Parliament had been pressing her for years to name an heir, something she stubbornly was refusing to do. Now, as her condition worsened, her ministers feared the worst. If she died, who would take the throne? Mary, Queen of Scots, of course, was waiting in the wings, but many in England saw her as a Catholic threat. Another contender, Lady Catherine Grey, sister to the ill-fated Lady Jane Grey, we've been talking about her and the Greys a lot a couple of weeks ago. She had her own claim, but her secret marriage had been declared invalid. Her sons were illegitimate. It was a very tangled, dangerous mess. Inside the palace, Mary Sidney, Mary Dudley, the Queen's devoted lady-in-waiting, sister of Robert Dudley, nursed Elizabeth personally. She actually caught the infection herself and was left permanently disfigured, though she did live. It was an act of loyalty that cost her dearly. Her face never healed, and her health suffered for years afterward. As Elizabeth lay unconscious, some sources suggest she named Robert Dudley to oversee the council should she die, which only added fuel to the rumors about their closeness. Ministers were reportedly in tears, already fearing the end of the Tudor line. For a few days in that October of 1562, England truly stood on the brink, one fever away from crisis, one heartbeat away from civil war, potentially. And then, against all odds, the fever broke. After days of delirium, Elizabeth opened her eyes. Her physicians must have exhaled so loudly you could have heard it in Westminster. England got its queen back. But the ordeal had changed her. The illness left deep scars on her skin, and her once lustrous red gold hair began to fall out in patches. She took to wearing wigs and heavy makeup, that thick white Venetian ceruse made from white lead and vinegar, to mask the marks that smallpox had carved into her face. It's not hard to imagine how that must have affected her sense of self. She'd been known for her wit and charm, of course, but also for her beauty. In the unforgiving world of Tudor politics, appearance mattered, and now the mirror reflected a survivor, but a transformed survivor. Some have even suggested that this experience deepened her obsession with control over her court, over her image, over her legacy. She had stared death in the face and she had beaten it. And after that, she was determined that nothing, not Parliament, not suitors, not time itself, would ever have that kind of power over her again. The people saw her recovery as a sign of God's favor, proof that she was destined to lead England into its golden age. But the fear that it inspired never truly left her. She refused to name a successor right until the very end of her life. She was perhaps haunted by just how close she'd come to ending the Tudor line in 1562. Her image, too, was forever shaped by this brush with death. The painted mask we see in her later portraits, pale, serene, unaging, was both armor and artifice. Behind it lay a human being who had once nearly died in a fevered chamber at Hampton Court, and who didn't forget what that felt like. Maybe that's also part of her magic. Out of the scars, she forged this legend of Gloriana, the woman who turned vulnerability into majesty. Now, Elizabeth wasn't the last monarch to face this killer. Over a century later, Queen Mary II would die of smallpox in 1694. A reminder, of course, that even royal blood offered no immunity. But the story didn't end there. In the 1700s, the practice of variolation, deliberately infecting someone with a mild case to protect against a severe one, began to take hold in England, championed by women like Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. And by the late 18th century, Edward Jenner's experiments with cowpox would pave the way for the world's first true vaccine, a scientific miracle that finally conquered the disease that had once threatened to end the Tudor dynasty. Also in the U.S., of course, George Washington was working to make sure that all of the soldiers fighting against the British, the Continental Army, were vaccinated against smallpox as well. I think it was required to serve in the army that you be vaccinated against smallpox. And there's some early stories of the vaccination was very bad. You still got a case of smallpox, but it was a very mild case. So there's a lot of stories about that happening within the Continental Army. So that's kind of interesting too. All right, my friend, if you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed it, I sure would appreciate a press of that like button. It helps to feed that algorithm and get our content to even more people. And I hope that I earned your subscription to my channel where I put out content like this on the regular. If you would like to keep watching content on infectious diseases, here's a video on the time that Anne Boleyn almost died of the sweat. Or here's a video that YouTube thinks you'll like. All right, my friend, remember, you are deeply loved. I am so glad that we share the planet with each other. You make the planet a better place, and I'm grateful we got to spend this time talking about Tudor England. I will be back very, very soon. In the meantime, don't forget to drink your water. Bye-bye, friend.